and welcome to our replay of the Ward 8 Democrats Forum for Ward 8 Council. I'm Troy Dante Presswood, President of the Ward 8 Democrats. Be sure to click like and click share across all social platforms so all of our Ward 8 family and friends can get a kind reminder that it's election season here in D.C., here in Ward 8, and it's time to vote. The Ward 8 Democrats have organized this forum to provide you with valuable insights from the candidates vying for our support. Now, before we delve into the replay, I want to offer you a quick reminder that voting is now underway and you have several convenient options to cast your ballot. First, you can return your mail-in ballot at any of the designated drop box locations located throughout the city. A list of the locations here in Ward 8 are now on your screen. Feel free to take a screenshot of them right now so you'll have it for later. If you prefer, you can also drop off your completed ballot in the mail or at a post office. You can use a Dropbox location. They close at 8 o'clock on Tuesday, June 4th. If you're using the mail, it must be postmarked by primary election day to count. For those who wish to vote in person before Election Day, early vote centers are available for your convenience. Here we have listed the locations here in Ward 8. You can also take your completed mail-in ballot to a vote center if you must. And if you need to register or update your voter registration, you can do that at any vote center in Ward 8 or anywhere in the district. And lastly, the final day to vote is Election Day, Tuesday, June 4th. These vote centers will be open here in the ward. Feel free to screenshot them right now so you'll have it at your ready. Tuesday, June 4th is the final day to cast your ballot in person, so be sure to get your vote in on this date and bring 4 or 5 friends and plus some family members with you, as they should cast their vote as well. Now, although I've shown you the locations here in Ward 8, you can vote anywhere in the district. Now, you can visit ward8dems.com/ward8votes for all the latest information to help you vote successfully in the June 4th primary. From where you can vote to sample ballots and videos of all of our forums, we got you covered at that website. Remember, your vote is your voice, and it shapes the future of our community. Don't delay, make your choice, and participate in the political process. Now, let's delve into this forum and hear directly from candidates vying for our support. Pay close attention, as their words will guide you in making an informed decision at the polls. Enjoy.
District of Columbia. While its central role as a legislative body is to make laws, its responsibilities also include oversight of multiple agencies, commissions, boards, and other areas of district government. 13 members make up the council, 5 at-large members, including the chairman, and 8 council members representing each ward, including right here in Ward 8. They each are elected to 4-year terms. The incumbent is Trayon White, Sr., who was first elected in 2016 and is seeking a 3rd term. 2 challengers want to replace him, including Rahman Branch, Mr. Branch, a former educator and principal of Ward 8's Ballou High School, and Mayor Bowser's first executive director of African American Affairs. And then we have Salim Adofo, an ANC commissioner and chair of ANC 8C. I can tell already this is going to be a fiery, a passionate debate. Thank you all for coming. So let's meet our candidates now. You all can join me on stage as we get started for this second debate. One more time for all of our candidates for Ward 8. have 1 minute for an opening statement. We're going to start with a 90-second response to questions and then move to 1 minute responses and then 30-second responses. So your response time is going to get shorter and shorter, and hopefully we'll be able to stop some of the feedback in just a bit so that everyone here and online can hear me clearly. We may also move to some rapid fire questions towards the end. So those are super short questions and answers. Any necessary rebuttals, and necessary is the operative word here, will be given 30 seconds. And please familiarize yourself with our timer for today. Ms. LaJoy, can I have you stand, please, in the heat jacket? That way you can stay within your allotted time. A quick reminder, I know we have quite a few more people, and Miss Regina too. Let me have you stand as well. She's helping Miss LaJoy there. More people have arrived, so I want to go over some quick housekeeping that I did off the top. I will begin with the questions initially, but no one knows which questions I'm going to ask. I have not told the candidates here or anyone else, so only I know the questions. But those of you who are here, you can submit questions on your own. If you do not have an index card, you want one, please raise your hand. We will have someone come to you for an index card, and then we will also later on have Troy walk around and ask questions as well. So let's move into each candidate now with a 1 minute opening statement. That's 60 seconds, and I'm going to start with Councilmember White.
Good evening, Ward 8. I'm sorry, good afternoon, Ward 8. My name is Trayon White, and for the last 23 years, I've been committed to this community. This community has raised me and made me who I am today. I just didn't get here alone. There were people who paved the way for me to get here. When it comes to every major issue in this ward, I stood on the front line advocating for equity and justice for our residents. And so not just talking the talk, but walking the walk. Where you sit today is a manifestation of our vision here in Ward 8. Look around here. 20 black-owned businesses right here in our community here in Ward 8 as a result of our leadership. If you look across the aisle over there, you know we talked about a hospital in Ward 8 for 20 years. Guess what? That hospital is getting done. I'm the candidate, I'm the council member, and the leader for this ward with an incredible vision, but I can't do this without you. I learned a long time ago that if you're not at the table, then you're on a menu. So each and every day I wake up, I go to the table and fight for people like you because I know my grandmother raised me here and God gave me the grace to fight for you every day. But I need your support. Don't just stand there. Do something. Thank you, God bless.
Now I want to move to Commissioner Adofo for a 1 minute opening statement. And after the opening statements, we want to have all of you remain seated throughout your responses.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Salim Adofo. I'm chair of ANCHC and also a candidate for DC Council to represent Ward 8. You're standing right here, yes, at the Inner Retail Village, and as a commissioner, I helped bring this to existence. The hospital, I worked on that as well, making sure that we could get the necessary paperwork to bring that into existence. The new townhomes being built, that we can make sure that residents who are living below the AMI, the area of medium income, can get residence right here. A lot of the roads that we have in this community, I've also helped repair. Some of the schools in this community, I've gone in, painted with some of you all in here. We've helped to make sure that we can take students on college trips, and we've done a lot of work to make sure that the education of our community can be improved. And we can continue to do more with more access to the legislation and to the budget. My name is Salim Adofo, number 3 on the ballot. Thank you.
Mr. Branch.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Rahman. Good afternoon. My name is Rahman Branch. I've been in service to Ward 8 since 2005. I had the privilege of being the principal of the best high school in Washington, D.C., and I stand behind that. And during that time, I made sure that we really worked to do what all leaders should be doing, is be of service to the community that they work for. So we had the privilege of serving over 1,400 students and their families every year, making sure that we manage a $17 million budget and bring us a $147 million school. We made sure that education in Congress Heights specifically went up, truancy went down, and so did violent interactions in the neighborhood and in the school. We're at a crisis time in Ward 8 where those things are now permeating throughout the district. And you need someone who knows how to do those things and make sure our children are able to be the next 4th, 5th, 6th generation Washingtonian. My name is Rahman Branch, and I can do that for you. Thanks for having me today.
To the questions. I will not ask you all in the same order each time. It will be different every time, but I will begin with the incumbent on this first one. What strategies would you use to engage youth, and have you used to engage youth in preventing crime and fostering a safe community?
That's a great question, because my history is built in youth engagement. I ran a nonprofit organization in this community called Help Inner City Kids Succeed. In fact, in my last 3 campaigns, look right here, raise your hands to the youth that's on our campaign right there, raise your hand. And just yesterday, Jimmy and I had a panel yesterday at Ballou Senior High School trying to engage the young men in our community. We know that a lot of people label them as the problem, but we believe that the solution lies in the problem. So each and every day I volunteer, work inside the schools, but also I'm creating a program for peer mediation where they can be their own solution to addressing youth crime in their community. Because as you know, before crime escalates to an adult, they are text messaging each other on Instagram, and so we believe that we have to empower them and pay them to be youth ambassadors each and every day right here in our own communities.
Mr. Branch.
So, great question. So my background is in youth development. I spent most of my career making sure the next generation is better than us. To that end, as the principal of Ballou High School, I made sure that violence went down by 60% year by year. Made sure that students who are graduating, we had a 250% increase in graduation. We made sure that children were not only graduating, but going off to college. How do we do it? We use strategies like stabilizing the family, making sure that all the needs in the family were met. We did that by opening a nonprofit called the Friends of Ballou, raised nearly $10 million to make sure families have the things they need, so children come to school and just be children. We made sure that the teachers and the staff understood what young people needed, and we programmed to meet their needs, not our wants. And then finally, we made sure that above all, whatever our young people were interested in, there was a pathway for them to get to have full-time jobs, living wage jobs around that work. And then all those things that had to happen, we had to present it in a space that was worthwhile to the children of Congress Heights. So for Ballou Senior High School, City Council gave us $8 million for that building. I wrangled $147 million from City Council to make sure our children had the best school in Washington, D.C., because we serve the best children in Washington, D.C.
As a commissioner, I've worked with some of the children down at the Berry Farms Rec Center. We had after-school programming where we teach them STEM, science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. We've taken the children on annual HBCU tours to Hampton University, to Norfolk State University. I've worked with Ms. Holly right here in the back. We've had financial literacy classes at Industrial Bank and provided stipends to the children so they can open up bank accounts. So if we're talking about addressing some of the violence in the community, we got to educate our children and get them the right financial grounding along with their families so that we can make it a family learning environment to address some of these issues. Not only that, we take time with our young children and mentor them on how to become young men. Because one of the things that's very important is that we work with our young boys and get them to understand that they have a responsibility and a duty to themselves and to their families. And when we do that, we can then start to look at our brothers and sisters as our own family. And if we want to address some of that violence, we got to get them to see the value in themselves. So through those programs, as a council member, we have more resources that we can pour into them and into their families, because we just can't work with them. We got to work with the people who they're surrounded by as well.
We're going to shift now to 60 seconds as the time limit as we move through here. I want to start with you, Mr. Adofo, go down that way. Knowing that we do need changes when it comes to youth and violence, I know as an anchor and reporter, there have been many concerns about over-policing and police misconduct in way of doing that. So how would you balance the need for public safety, but then make sure we don't have those type of concerns in Ward 8?
Public safety doesn't start and stop with the discussion of punishment and crime. Those are the consequences. The public safety starts with making sure that we got the resources in the community that we need. So as a commissioner working with DMPED to make sure that this comes into fruition, we need to increase these types of opportunities to get more business here. Working with DOS to make sure that programs such as the school year internship program is fully funded. The high school internship program is fully funded so that we keep our children on the straight and narrow, keep them on their dean, and keep them in programming throughout the school year that can get them where they need to be. Working with some of the nonprofits in our community, such as Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated, to make sure that our young girls have the mentorship that they need in the spaces where they're at.
Councilmember White, I know you've been speaking out on this as well. The question again, how would you balance the need for public safety with concerns about over-policing and police misconduct?
First, when it comes to policing, we have to hire within our own communities. The data reflects that people who come from their community have a sense of sensitivity and a sense of caring for their own communities. And so part of my leadership, I can talk about what I'm going to do, but I want to talk about what I've done. I helped foster with OSSI a youth MPD engagement program with the pilot program at Anacostia High School. So if you go to Anacostia, there's a program inside of Anacostia where you can go from high school to becoming a police officer right here in our ward. And that has never been done prior to Trayon White. One of the other things you got to believe is that you got to empower youth to believe in themselves. And sometimes we don't create positive things for them to do and leave them to do destructive things. And so I sit on the Committee on Recreation, Libraries, and Youth Affairs. And when I grew up, we had 9 to 10 recs that closed down in our community. And part of my leadership, we are about to upstage 6 brand new recreation centers right here in the Great Ward 8, and that's leadership. I want to also talk about reaching out to other organizations like Youth Devised. I'm sorry, I'm over my time. All right, sorry. Thank y'all. God bless.
Same question.
So a couple things I think have to happen. It is quite all right to recognize that oversight of police can be something that a council member works to do. That looks like having consistent meetings with 7D Commander to make sure you're understanding what the needs are of the community, having conversations around the data of when community members are having interaction with police, what the outcomes were, and how the police showed up in that space. I think that's important to have. But in addition, we have to make sure that we're recruiting and we're retaining officers here. I actually have a program on how to retain the police officers so our numbers don't drop. And then ultimately, in regards to all of it, we have to make sure that we have all the issues that are creating negative options in front of our residents addressed. And you do that by making sure there are living wage jobs for our neighborhood residents. You have to make sure that there are opportunities for our residents and access those opportunities to make sure that they're not finding their way into situations where police have to have the sort of misconduct that we've been seeing. And then lastly, police also can really, really benefit from interactions with our community in a healthier manner.
We're going to shift now to talk about poverty. I want to spend 60 seconds on this section, beginning with Mr. Branch. Can you discuss your plans for affordable housing and how they would help lift families out of poverty in Ward 8?
Yeah, so I think one of the things, the big conversation we've been experiencing now has been affordable housing, attainable housing, market rate housing. But I really believe that one of the things that we never really talk about is the war on poverty. And you make sure you have a war on poverty by providing people with opportunities to earn the kind of jobs that to create the kind of outcomes and lifestyles they want. So when we look at what that means there has to be a vocational ed school here in Ward 8. There has to be a robust set of offerings for people to have jobs. For every crane that comes in the sky here, who's working under those cranes are those Ward 8 residents, and make sure we have legislation in place to put all the money that everyone's celebrating into the pockets of our residents. We haven't attacked that. We found ways to make sure the rich come here, set up shop, and leave with the dollars, and our residents remain in a space where we're always looking for affordable housing. I believe every resident wants a chance to show up as their best self, and you do that by making sure they can earn the kind of money they have to participate in DC and stay for the long term.
Councilmember White, can you discuss your plans for affordable housing and how they will uplift people out of poverty?
Yes, absolutely. One of the things I created 2 years ago is the Commission on Poverty in conjunction with Absalom Jordan. So we have that commission to study and figure out a way to eradicate poverty in the district. As far as housing, I helped to create with the 11th Street Bridge Project, the Douglas Community Land Trust, because we can talk about affordable housing, but affordable means different things to different people. So when I say affordable, people say affordable for who? A $2 million house is affordable for someone, and so we have to speak a language that people know. And one of the things I did was I changed the law on the housing qualification for the Housing Production Trust Fund, because DC was breaking the law when it comes to spending the $100 million a year on what affordable housing looked like. So that's my job as a legislator. Secondly, I helped to create the DC Infrastructure Academy that's in Ward 8 to help people grow what I call affordable income, because minimum wage has not worked for black people. We need more money, more opportunities in our pocket. I also created the Dream Grant to empower people to own their own businesses and get money from the government, support their own minority businesses, and what you see right across this room here today. Thank you.
So to address the poverty in the community, we got to move people from dependency to self-sufficiency. And one of the ways that we can do that is by having the right educational institutions in the community. One of the first things I've done as a commissioner was help to get the UDC Workforce Development Campus right here in Congress Heights, where you can do construction, HVAC, plumbing, electrical, and various trades right in there, and all you have to do is be a DC resident. Another thing that we have to do is to improve the housing stock that we already have. So if you're in DCHA or you're on other complexes such as whether it's Cascade or if you're on Wingate or if you're in Marbury Plaza, making sure that we can get the Department of Buildings to do the right number of inspections so that we can improve the quality of housing and get the Attorney General's office to hold negligent property owners accountable. Then we have to make sure that when we have the new developments, such as the ones that we see on this campus with these townhomes, that we make sure that those that receive funding from the government, make sure that they have enough units set aside for folks who are living at the 30, 50, and 80% of the AMI.
Councilmember White, in a social media post Wednesday, you condemned Congress for meddling in DC's affairs after the House passed the DC Crimes Act. You said it, quote, violates our rights as so-called citizens and is a threat to our democracy. This is a sad day for America. If re-elected, what will you do to help fight for DC statehood or autonomy from Congress?
Thank you. I have a history of fighting for statehood. In fact, I was one of few that went to jail in Washington, D.C. for statehood for my city. And I think that we have to organize. We have an advantage here in the nation's capital because those congressmen live right here in our community. And we get riled up and get turned up for other things, but when we have someone have a direct threat to our democracy, we have to do something about it. And so I sent a text to my colleagues already. I communicated with the mayor's office, because not just the elected officials, but it's the people, the 600,000, 700,000 people in DC have to stand up for what we believe in. We cannot sit down and watch people take away our rights and demoralize us as citizens without doing anything. And so I'm gonna be organizing. Regardless of this election, I don't need a title for me to fight for what I believe in. And so I'm gonna organize and make sure. I even talked to Eugene Kenlow today about going down to Congress, fighting for our democracy so we can have a place and statehood right here in Washington, D.C. Thank you.
I'm going to go to 60 seconds on this before we shift to 30 seconds. Any response to what Councilmember White just said from either one of you?
So to fight for statehood, we got to make sure that we have relationships in other places across the country, because the way that it works is that the other states will be the ones voting for us to have statehood. And we have to leverage the base of support that we have here to communicate with people in other places. Whether it's Virginia, Maryland, California, Alaska, we got to build relationships in those places and get our relationships to the people who we know to tell their Congress leaders, to tell their representatives that we need statehood in this space, and to, once it now moves from the Senate to the House, to get those folks to be on our side on this issue.
So I mirror the same thing both these gentlemen said, in addition to making sure that our Congresswoman is getting all the resources that she needs from us, whether it's recognizing what the talent, the beauty, and the wonder of DC is, and really inviting Congress in to witness that, to really recognize that the people here not only deserve it, but have a right to the same sort of freedoms that everyone else has in the country by becoming the 51st state.
All right, I have some questions that are beginning to come in from the audience. I have my final one before I get to those. 30 seconds for each response. And I'll begin with you, Mr. Branch, and it'll be the same question for all three of you. Why do you think you are better than the other two candidates running for this job, and give examples?
So in the spirit of humanity, I won't say I'm better, but I do recognize that the council member, and many other luminaries in Ward 8 have actually endorsed and believe in my leadership by putting pen to paper multiple times. They've even written the mayor about selecting me for leadership positions. So my leadership has been stamped not only in my work, but in the benefit of community members who do know and don't know me. At the end of the day, I've never ran to the camera because I've always been about getting the work done. Everything my hands have touched have produced fruit for our ward, and that hasn't changed. Whether I worked as the principal of Baloo or the director of the mayor's office, you always won with me.
Unequivocally, I'm the most qualified candidate running for Ward 8 right now. There's no other candidate that's running right now that's passed legislation. There's no other candidate right now that's moved money in the budget to put $10 million back into our school when they took it out. There's no other candidate that talked about building a hospital, the hospital's getting built right across the street. There's no other candidate that talked about access to healthy health care that's built a state-of-the-art urgent care facility right here on MLK. I'm not just talking the talk, but my record speaks for itself in black and white. Trayon White for Ward 8 City Council.
I'm going to allow Commissioner Adofo to answer the original question, and I'm going to go back to you, Mr. Branch, on the comment most qualified. We give you all time to have a rebuttal. Why do you think you are better than the other two candidates running for this job?
I'm someone who's gonna make decisions. When we're on the panel, when we're on the dais, I will make decisions. I will include the residents of this community in the decision-making process. I will include the residents long before the opportunity even comes for us to have to make a final decision. We know in legislation when the budget is coming up, and we need to have those discussions all throughout the year and not just wait till the final moment. When we're looking at where we're at right now, I've been a part of this process for the hospital, for the interim retail village, for the housing right on this campus to help make sure that we can have a town center right here in Congress Heights.
So as far as qualifications go, working with council is something I've done. Like I mentioned, from an $8 million renovation to a $147 million new building, that's how you engage council. By making sure that the Office of African American Affairs becomes an office that can now give grant monies for small black business and for after-school programs and senior wellness, that's a qualification. To date, no council member, including our own, has put money into that office. That needs to be stated. Also, as a director of the Mayor's Office of African American Affairs, I was a part of the team that worked with the mayor to bring the infrastructure category to Ward 8 that the council member allowed to be taken out of Ward 8.
Ward 8 is surrounded by apartment buildings with many more being developed. What's your plan in holding property managers accountable to help residents thrive and eliminate blight out of our communities, especially when other agencies are not doing their jobs? Councilmember White, I'll let you take that first. No, we're going to do 30 seconds.
So historically, I've always held these property owners accountable. If you look through all of my efforts, I've brought DC, the Office of the Attorney General to the properties, Department of Buildings, formerly DCRI, to the properties, had hearings about the properties, and so I think that we should have the same standard of living that everyone else has all across the river, and I've embodied that. So anytime I see with a phone call or a text message or email that our residents are not living in quality living conditions, I go there, send my staff, and we put the paperwork in to make sure that they are living in quality living standards. Another thing, that the price that they have to pay to fix up these properties are minimum when it comes to the fees and fines, so we have to fix that as well.
Commissioner Adofo?
As a council member, I will make sure that we have legislation that once you hit a certain number of infractions or a certain amount of money, that you can no longer do business in the district. Many of these property owners already have fines that they're just not paying. Also, we need to increase the number of inspectors that we have. So if a building is of a certain age, we need to have more inspectors for those older buildings to make sure that those buildings are falling apart, or have not just the 1 or 2 inspectors we may have in a ward, so that we could get double amount of inspections taking place. And
legislatively, we need to tie a lot of our slumlords to the same issues we have around truancy. When we hear the mayor talk about holding parents accountable for truancy, I also believe living in terrible conditions and bad housing lends to young people having the type of health issues that keep them out of school. So by making sure that legislation exists where building owners can't become slumlords and we fine them up to the point of removing their properties from them is something I would legislate if I were to elect them.
Still in 30 seconds. You can also direct your questions to certain people on the panel, and I have this one from Mr. Adofo. Is there any truth to the allegations of alleged stealing of ANC funds? If so, and we can't trust you with those funds, can we trust you to head the ward with city council funds?
No, that's not true. That's just someone saying something at the time of the election to try to divert our attention from someplace else.
Here's another question that we have, and Mr. Branch, I'll let you begin, and then we'll go down the line here. What will you do, and what will you achieve in the first 100 days if elected?
So beginning in September, if winning the primary, beginning in September, we work with our community members to make sure that every single resident has a part to get heard and let us know what their desires are. We build consensus across the entire ward on what our priorities are, and then we make sure we're getting to work on those. So by December of this year, there'd be a calendar and they would know who their responsive officers are, who's going to get what work done, and then we'll walk into January 2nd, beginning to serve the residents of Ward 8 because we would actually start this summer.
Councilmember White, what will you achieve in the first 100 days if re-elected?
Well, one of the first things I would do is I would unify the candidates. I think that anyone who wants to do this job has to have a heart to work in this community, because this is one of the hardest things I ever did in my life. And so I want to unify the candidates to make sure we all are pushing if we want the best for Ward 8. Secondly, what I always do is I have a community meeting where I create these working committees on several different topics around poverty, around education empowerment, around mentoring, around senior services, etc. And I put forward my agenda, partner with the community agenda to make sure we are unified and fighting for what we need to get 7 votes and move the ward forward. Thank you.
Commissioner Adofo, same question. What would you achieve in the first 100 days?
I will start that process right after the primary, working through to make sure that we can get information documented as to what needs to be worked on. And then once you take office on January 2nd, you're moving right into oversight and budget season. So we will know where we need to allocate funds at to improve the conditions in the community through the budget.
This next question, I'm going to start with Councilmember White. How do we stress the importance, this is from one of you, the importance of voting to residents in the first place?
Well, we have to make people believe that this government works for them. Historically, people of color feel like the government doesn't work for them. And so each and every day I spend my life energy knocking on doors, talking to people, answering Instagram messages, answering text messages, because I believe that not only am I elected official, but I work for the people. And so we have to always remind ourselves that in leadership positions, and we have to take their issues and bring it to fruition. For example, we talked about the recreation centers not being built in the ward. And so now we look at Furby Hope, it's a brand new rec. Look at Anacostia, it's a new rec coming. So people have to see and feel what we're saying and doing each and every day.
Commissioner Adofo, how do we stress the importance of voting for residents?
We stress the importance of voting to residents by, one, going into the schools, registering people to vote, working with our ward democratic organizations and our citywide organizations to continuously register young folks to vote and get engaged and show them how their vote actually makes a difference, to show them how them being involved can impact the quality of their life. But this has to be done continuously. This can't just be something that we do once a year or just around election time. We have to do these things in the times when there isn't an election happening.
Mr. Branch.
So I'll start with what I've already done. Every year at Blue High School, on average, 100 children would enroll and register to become voters. That means that every young person recognized at 18, their vote mattered, their voice mattered, and their participation in this government is almost a responsibility. By doing that, we have young people who become 20-year-olds and 30-year-olds who are already in the process of being involved in government. It's very important to make sure that every person knows that their voice counts, and that engagement is something that they see, because as an elected official, my office will make sure that we're engaged with folks and keeping them informed about everything we do.
I'm going to go back to one of my questions and pick up with, because we have some of the same questions coming in. Ward 8 has some of the biggest disparities in access to health and mental health care in the district. The average life expectancy is 10 years lower in Ward 8 than in Ward 3. How will you address the social determinants of health in Ward 8?
Well, first of all, I think we have to remove the stigma. As a council member, I talk about all the time that I go to therapy every Wednesday at 8 a.m. I say that because some people think that's not for us. But the reality is we face a lot of trauma growing up in these communities. And we don't deal with that trauma deals with us and manifests in different ways. And so we've opened up 4 new mental health agencies in Ward 8 in the last 5 years. In fact, I've helped some of these organizations integrate with our schools, because we know that counselors and even some of the teachers are unable to deal with the magnitude of violence and stress and depression we go through each and every day in our community. So we have to have a system in place to deal with the trauma each and every day we go through in our community.
Mr. Branch and Mr. Adofo, same question, Mr. Branch first. How will you address the social determinants of health in Ward 8?
There are a lot of things that are impacting us at that degree. One of the issues that we have right now are, as a principal, I've seen so many young children come to school with green chips and blue juices and red bags with seeds and sausages and things that are actually going to be determinants of health in the long term. So we have to make sure that our stores have the kind of supports to sell healthier snacks. We have to make sure that the schools are designed to provide the meals and the healthy options for our young people that they historically haven't. And then we have to make sure at the very least that health care and behavioral health is available to every resident in schools and outside.
We got to shift the culture and how we view health. We got to shift the culture and how we go to doctors. For example, I work with Whitman Walker Health to partner with Baloo High School to make sure that we can have testing on National HIV and AIDS Awareness Day. We got to talk to our brothers about making sure they go get checked out. There was a bill for no-cost cancer screenings, making sure things like that are in place so that we can shift in how we view our health. And in doing so, we then change the direction that we go. We got the Ward 8 Farmers Market, which is an educational opportunity for us to learn about our health as well.
Next question, start with Branch here. Would you support term limits for council members and other elected officials? And if so, how many terms would be the cutoff?
Well, my answer is yes. I think at the end of the day, you have to have term limits because you can avoid having people looking to keep a job versus serving a community. And a lot of times we get compromised when we don't have term limits. I would limit it to 2 terms. I think everyone should come in, make the impact and the change they desire to see, and then go back to being a private citizen. If not, we're going to continue to have politicians who are going to make decisions based upon what keeps them in the seat versus what's best for the community that they're serving.
My answer is no. I think that we have to continuously give the people the power to decide. If you're working a job and you're not doing a good job as a council member, mayor, whatever elected official, the people have the right to vote you out. And so that's the democratic way in our city. So my short answer is no.
Yes, I would support term limits. I think 2 years is 2 terms is fair enough. When we look and see what type of leadership that we have and the need to be able to grow, you should be able to do that in your second term. And then we need to be able to have new and fresh ideas always come in. So that way we don't get people who become career politicians in these places and then abuse or leverage their power to stay in power to satisfy their own needs.
Give a rebuttal to Councilmember White.
One of the things that people don't know is that when you become a new council member, you don't have any committees. And not having any committees takes away your bargaining power to get things done. You have no budget, no oversight, no agencies. And so when it comes time to get money for the reward, you have nothing to bargain against. And so we get a new council member, Ward 8 is going to be stagnant for at least 2 years. And we can't afford to be stagnant for 2 years.
legislation would you pass to help children with disabilities access services?
So there's a variety of different types of disabilities that we have. So then it would have to be specific in that space. But one of the things that I can tell you when we look at our educational system is making sure that there's more money in the budget for our school who have disabilities.
Mr. Branch,
Say it again, please.
what legislation would you pass to help children with disabilities access services?
So it's important to note that right now, I would say that every child in the District of Columbia, especially in Ward 8, can be identified with something given the trauma that we exist in. So across the board, there has to be robust funding for early childhood educators. There has to be robust funding for teachers to be skilled and trained at the things that they need to know in order to serve our children properly. And so if elected, first bill that we'd initiate is a bill to make sure that all teachers pre-K through 5th grade are trained in the science of reading. As a principal, 60% of my young people came to Ballou reading between kindergarten and 4th grade levels. That has to change. That's an adult problem.
First of all, disabilities is a broad term. And so normally when I think about legislation, I try to figure out what are the advocates or organizers, those people who are experts in those fields, feel like we need to do as it relates to policy. And that informs my decision because as a council member, people think that you have all the answers, have all the information. Well, we don't. The people that's experiencing these things every day has the information we need. And so I meet with those different sects of people that are struggling with those disabilities or need access to resource disabilities to write the legislation to ensure we're targeting it the right way and funding it to get the desired result. Thank you.
Another question from the crowd here, Mr. Branch. I'm going to start with you this time. Will you support or fight for churches to be a safe haven for overnight for teenagers? Churches to be a safe haven overnight for teenagers.
Yes.
You want to answer that?
I think that every organization or institution in Ward 8 has a responsibility to open up their doors. Just last night, I was down Berry Farms for the late night hike that they had at Berry Farms. We opened the doors to 11 o'clock p.m. to give youth and young adults safe spaces just to be them, to have fun, enjoy themselves. And we have to do that all across the board. Yes, the churches, the mosques, vacant buildings. We have to open up spaces and recs so we can have people who care about our kids in their lives and create mentors and opportunities for them to have fun and be kids again. Thank you.
The answer to that is yes. And then as a legislator and someone who puts funds in the budget, it'll be your responsibility to make sure that the resources are there for our faith-based institutions so they can have the capacity to do such.
We'll keep the mic and we'll take it back this way. This is from one of you. How do you see yourself relating to non-political, everyday people in Ward 8? How many people actually know that you are actually for the people?
That's a good question. We spend time in a variety of different spaces, whether it's at the rec center, whether it's walking in the park, and you build relationships with people, and then you help them be a part of the community. You help them be a part of the process. And that is having town hall meetings, having social events, having them come to spaces just like this, and we can interact and build the relationships that way.
Councilmember White.
There are those in the ward who disagree with me politically on different issues. But I dare to say there's nobody who can say that Trayon White is not about the people. My reputation speaks for itself. There's an old saying in the Bible that a tree is recognized by its fruit, and my fruit is evident here today. Thank you.
So if I have to wonder, then I probably wouldn't be sitting on this stage. Ultimately, the community came to me and asked me if I'd be willing to support and run for Ward 8 City Council because they identified a need and a void. I will offer up that since being here as a principal since 2005, the nearly 40 plus folks who are volunteering on my campaign consist of Ballou students and families. So if I'm connected to every young person, the thousands that I've supported, and the families who I've backed. I'm definitely a Ward 8 resident.
Another question from one of our attendees here, Ward 8 has a lot of outside people who profit from Ward 8 poverty. How will you ensure that residents see progress without selling out our community?
That's a great question. So it's evident around this room. I see Love Moore here. He went to Blue with me. Javon. You look on the other side. You see the museum. You see creative culture. You see Kiana. You see all these businesses in the ward is because of leadership. Everything rises and falls on leadership. So every Monday at 5 o'clock p.m., we have a meeting with a development project, figuring out how we can get one, local business involved, and two, how to get our people employed to work on these projects. And also create legislation if you get money from the government and don't involve people that be coming after you. You've seen the protests we had on MLK with the Gateway Pavilion, actually. And also several projects that I've been on the front line advocating and fighting for developers to have Ward 8 businesses and Ward 8 people working on the projects.
The way that we can make sure that the residents who are from this ward participate in that is to make sure that they get the education that they need. That's why we have a campus at UDC right here, so that we can learn the skills of plumbing, electrical, carpentry, so that as many of these projects come up, and we have the qualified skills right here from this community, the qualified tradesmen right here from this community, so they can participate in the development in this community. We need to make sure that we get the engineers from this community right here. So that's why I would start STEM education programs right in Barry Farm Rec Center, so that we can develop the future engineers right from this community.
When I came to Blue High School, there were 79 different partners who were getting nearly $8 million a year on serving our students and were never around. One of the first things I did as principal was meet with all 89 of those partners, reduce it down to 8 people who actually did the work, and took that $7 million and made sure it worked for our families. So off the top, you have to make sure people who say they're gonna do the work are about the work. As a council member, you have to have oversight to that fact. The second thing you have to make sure you do is, right now, as we're looking at development in our community, how do we make sure Ward 8 residents are working on those projects? Project labor agreements are a major part of making sure when development comes in, they hire us first.
A rebuttal now from Councilmember White, 30 seconds.
What also happens is that we've made some of these development projects create what is called CBAs, Community Benefit Agreements. That's money allocated to give to some of the local businesses. All right, Teresa, raise your hand. All right, is one of the lawyers right in front of Great Ward 8 that sues companies in Ward 8 that don't do right by the people. And that's what we have to do. Create opportunities where local organizations, businesses, even our schools can benefit. We're doing that with Monumental Sports right now with the $13 million they have to allocate to Ward 8 organizations. So it's about holding them accountable and making them a vested partner right here in our ward.
This is from one of you out there. How will you encourage youth to engage in greater civic and political advocacy to ensure they are not left out of new laws and legislation?
That means we have to take our office to where the young people are at, whether we're in the school system working with them, bringing them down to the Wilson building, or holding meetings with different youth groups. But we also should form a junior council where we can have some of the leadership from the schools participate in that process. The best leaders for young folks will be amongst themselves. So we got to get young people to be a part of that process and create the leadership streams for them through a youth advisory council.
Mr. Branch, then Councilmember White.
Engaging youth is my expertise and my background. If elected, one of the things that has to happen is I will have a youth council who will be a part of my office, who actually informs me on what young people's interests are, so I can provide for those, what their fears are, so I can protect against those, and what their aspirations are, so I can help build a pathway towards it. The commitment has to be less in our big brass and glass buildings and more to the young people, because that's how we determine what Washington will be in the next 20 years.
So I'm the first council member in at least 10 years that had youth hearings. I've had them right here in Ward 8 on the weekends where they can access us and we can access them. I've also been integral in bringing youth from the community down to the Wilson building so they can see how we're working for them and if we're not working for them. I've also created a safe space to go inside the schools, sit inside the classrooms and hear their concerns. Not just hear their concerns, but when I talk about creating the peer mediation organization, that came from the youth. And so they have a plethora of great ideas. We just have to listen to them, believe in them, and implement what they're saying each and every day.
Next question, Councilmember White, I want you to take it first, then Branch and Adofo. This is from one of you out there. Does Ward 8 have the luxury of choosing a new council member knowing they won't have a committee for 2 years?
The short answer is no. I believe we made some tremendous strides in the last couple of years, but the reality is we have a long way to go. I've created great relationships across the board to get 7 votes on a lot of different bills, to get money moved to our committees to do some of the things we're doing now. In fact, some of the seniors said they want a senior wellness center in Ward 8, and some of the other wards said they didn't have it. Guess what? That senior wellness center is getting built right in the back of Kramer Middle School next year, right here in the Great Ward 8. So I'm delivering on my promises and crossing the aisles, making sure we can advocate and stand on the front line to get things done. And that's really what it's about, getting things done.
The easy answer is yes. Yes, we can, because ultimately in the last 8 years, we have to determine that the needle hasn't moved nearly enough for us. And we see other council members who've come in after 2 years, get a committee, and now they're making laws that impact the entire city. So building great relationships, having an understanding of what the need is, and to actually be a legislator, to be in the Wilson building, making the laws that protect us is the work. And you can definitely get that done by building strong relationships in your first 2 years. So when you have a committee, you're well informed and you do have that bargaining power that we discussed.
The answer is yes, but it's not a luxury, it's a necessity. Any council member can introduce legislation, and all council members vote on the budget regardless of tenure on the council. So day one, you can introduce legislation to the council. On day one, your vote is as equal as any other council member as it pertains to the budget. And the truth is, we have council members right now that don't introduce legislation, and we do have some that do, regardless of the time. But we need to make sure that we're engaging with the residents so that we know on day one, we know what legislation we want to bring to the table.
We have less than 10 minutes for this event. Having said that, if you have not voted in the straw poll at the back there, please make your way over there because we want to make sure your vote is counted. We're going to shift to rapid fire. I just got a lot of interesting questions, just 15 seconds, okay, for each response. And we're going to go Adofo down that way, Branch back this way, and this was rapid fire. And more. The last question is mine. So many nonprofits repeatedly get grants annually with little to no results. Do you think more faith-based institutions should be given the opportunity to do programs such as the Safe Passage with grants and city support?
The answer is yes, but that also comes with us having better oversight and some metrics to determine if it's actually worth giving these grants to these organizations.
I believe that any organization that has results should get funding. You can be faith-based, you can just be a regular non-profit organization working in the community. The reality is that when we give you money to do things, we want to see results and people's lives change as a result of those funding. Point blank, period. Thank you.
Anyone who receives funding from the government should definitely have to turn in results. And if you don't, I think it becomes very easy to find someone who replaces that work, similar to finding someone who can give us better options on the council.
Next question, what would Ward 8 look like in 10 years if you win?
Oh, awesome. So Ward 8 would look like a place where the median income is on the rise, our academic reality for our children is higher, there'll be less truancy, we will have a vocational education school here, we will have a ton of Ward 8 residents who are certified, have certificate skills and prerequisite skills to have living wage jobs, and we will turn 70% renters into homeowners.
In 10 years, Ward 8.
One, we have to fight that the people who live here now can be here in 10 years. The price of living in DC is skyrocketing up where the incomes are not reaching those standards. And so one, we gotta empower people to grow their income. Because if you can't afford to live here, you won't be here no more. We're past the conversation talking about gentrification. Right now in our world, we're talking about genocide. And so, that's fast.
Thank you. Commissioner Adofo, what will Ward 8 look like in 10 years?
In 10 years, Ward 8 will look safer. It'll be a place where our children can come outside and play, where our elders can walk to the corner store, put their bills in the mail, and get their prescriptions.
Commissioner White, next question. Councilmember White, sorry about that. We need another grocery store. How will you fight for one?
I have for one. In fact, I put $600,000 in the budget to open up a grocery store. In fact, the fresh food factory behind us is a recipient of some of those funds to open up right here in Ward 8. We are in conversation with other grocery options for Ward 8 right now. And I'll be honest, I'm the one that helped save Giant that we had with the street that was about to close right here in the Great Ward 8. I'm the champion on the front line, advocating for equity and inclusion around healthcare, access to food, etc.
Mr. Branch, we need another grocery store. How will you fight for one?
So, just a simple fact, big business makes decisions based upon the tax base. If I make sure our residents who are living here now have the living wage jobs that they desire to have, our tax base will grow up because our folks will have independence on making decisions, and then you'll see more than just grocery stores. All the amenities you want will be here because they'll look at our residents' tax base.
We can take some of the food institutions that we already have and make sure that there's more funding in the budget for them. So as this campus gets built, we can see some of the institutions move right into some of these new buildings.
Here, go down the line. How will you help misguided young black men and save them from prison and the grave?
We got to make sure that we have the institutions in our community that are geared toward working with young black men, whether it's our fraternities, military, church organizations. We need to do that consistently by having the programming and the funding in the budget to make sure that that works.
We have to be intentional about supporting organizations who are on the ground doing the work. We have Youth to Violence DC, Triumphant Leaders, Manpower DC, the DC Bulldogs who are doing work every day in the trenches. And so I'm the one that put money into Office of Out of School Time to ensure that we have before, during school, and after school programs for everyday youth in our communities.
I think it's important. I think it's to make sure that everybody recognizes that the right people have to be in front of young folks. And I think that's a start. Our schools are a major place where the right adults have to be in front of children and prepare with the skills that they need to have to make sure young children have the options and the opportunities to become the kind of young adults they want to become. Lots of them.
Final rapid fire question. We're going to start with Councilmember White, Branch, and then Adofo. How will you help senior citizens get a job and a house?
Well, one of the things that I'm doing now is I'm enhancing the 50+ program. Historically, in DOES, we only had 25 slots available for seniors who are on fixed income and have to make a decision to get their food or buy their medicine. And so right now in the budget, I'm putting money in the budget right now to increase that program to 100 job opportunities for our seniors right here in Ward 8.
I think for starters, it's important to make sure that families who own homes, our seniors, are able to stay in their homes and not be pushed out of them because of fixed income and property tax. So we review the tax deferral program. One of the things that often hamstrings seniors is when they have to make sure that they're making a decision between what to buy with their taxes being raised too high when they're on a fixed income.
Right now, our seniors have this Stay at Home, the Aging at Home Act. We need to make sure that that funding is fully funded and more seniors can get access to that, but also making sure that we can reduce the property tax for many of our seniors so that they can stay in their places.
The last final two questions will come from yours truly. We'll start with you and then go down that way. What do you see as the main problem for Ward 8, and why do you believe you're best equipped to fix it?
I would say
60 seconds for these final two.
The main issue I see in this community right now is our issues around housing. We have DCHA, we have properties that are negligent, and what are we going to do to make sure that the vacant housing that we have is available as well as repaired? What about the low-income housing that we have in places like Marbury Plaza or Wingate that are in need of repair? We need to make sure that we get more funding in the budget to the Department of Buildings to get more inspectors, that the Attorney General's office can make sure that they're holding those property owners accountable, and then making sure that new housing that is built is in a space that is affordable, and affordable meaning that we have some that is deeply affordable in the 30, 50, 80% of the AMI. But not only that, then we got to connect people to those resources such as HPAC program to make sure that they can own a home. One of the strongest ways to make sure that we can have residents who stay here is to make sure that they have home ownership right in the community in which they grew up and live.
One of the biggest problems I see as a leader is a lack of unity in our community. I think that we are too divided as a people, and we cannot afford to be divided during a time as this. Dr. King said unity or non-existence. We have the power to go down and change laws, get any bill passed, move any money around if we just come together to unify. And we also have to change the mindset and culture of our people. I've seen our young people who have brilliant talents and gifts get tear down by their other brothers and sisters. And so we have to know who we are and whose we are, and with that, we can change anything we want to change in our own personal spaces, ultimately affecting the culture and environment in our communities.
The largest problem I think we have is education, quite frankly. We often put money into places and spaces mainly because those folks can garner our vote, and we often miss the reality of what our children need. Every investment we talk about has been about things that adults want, and we often miss the mark on what our children are screaming for, and that's why youth violence is where it is right now, and that's how we're hearing it on the news all the time. As a council member, what I would make sure that we're doing in that space is that we're providing young people with every opportunity to show up as their best self. That we're giving them not just aspiration and inspiration, but we're giving them a real pathway to earn the kind of living that they want, the kind of living that makes them better than us when they become our age, and the kind of living that makes sure they can become Washingtonians again and again and again. And when we talk about displacement, the way you fight that is by making sure we have the tools to make our independent, individual decisions, so as a community we can be, again, 70% renters turning into homeowners and professionals and career folk with the kind of jobs that allow us to live the lives we want in the district. That gives us that small town feel.
A final question for me, at least, and I want to go, did everyone go on that one? Yeah, I saw you. Okay. Okay, we got everybody, and I want to go in this order. Mr. Branch, Commissioner Adofo, and finally Councilmember White. Clearly you all are contenders, right? You're against each other in this race, but I want to end with, what is one thing you actually like about each of the people you're running against?
So each of them? Okay. No, that wasn't meant to be funny. So sincerely, one thing I would definitely I would applaud these gentlemen on is this takes a lot of work to come out front and do this. It takes a lot of work. And two, I think Councilmember White's heart is in the work. I think that's a great trait for him. He definitely loves, Ward 8 and wants to do right by it. And in regards to Mr. Adolfo, outside of his care as well for the community, I think he's one of the, he's probably as voracious a hip hop fan as I am.
Your final.
Well, for the record, I'm not against anyone up here. We're all campaigning for the seat. And I say that because we have a lot of violence in the community. And I'm not against anyone. We all want to see the community advance and move forward. And I think it's healthy for us to be able to have good brothers such as these in the space. Just like Mr. Branch said, I have a deep affinity for hip hop, and I think that's something that we share in common. And as well as Councilmember White, something that I think is really great is that the passion that we have for advancing our community.
I start to my left with Mr. Branch. I say Mr. Branch is not short of ambition. I've seen him serve the city as a principal, as a leader of government agencies, but also vying to be a council member. I say for Mr. Adolfo, he has strong work ethics. I can say that. I think that when there's an issue involving his commission or even in his single-member district or otherwise, he shows up and is very involved with the community when it comes to work ethics. So shout out to these candidates. They have no idea what they want to get into. But I applaud them for putting their life on the line, wanting to serve here in the great Ward 8. Thank you.
Seconds for any final words, any last pushes that you want to garner votes. So in this order, Commissioner Adofo, then Councilmember White, and Mr. Branch.
Salim Adofo, number 3 on the ballot. As we move forward into this community, we gotta look at where do we want to see ourselves and what do we need to have happen in order for us to be into that place. If you're undecided, if you are here, then that may mean you may have some questions about what we've had for the previous almost decade. And so now it's time for a change. And what that change needs to be is making sure that we have people who are going to be committed and dedicated to making sure that we can get the institutions in this community built and making sure that these institutions in the community reflect the folks who live in this community and who want to be here in this community. We need to make sure that the people who are in the community are part of that process. And I'm somebody who will make sure that the residents are part of that process, making sure that we can have that communication that we need on a day-to-day basis, and making sure that we can have that communication be transformed into a materiality. Salim Adofo, number 3 on the ballot.
My name is Trayon White. And over 2 decades ago, I made a promise to God. If you ever allow me to make it out, I'll come back and give back to my community. And I've held that promise. I believe that everything rises and falls on leadership. And I spend between 12 and 16 hours a day advocating and fighting for you. Regardless of who you would to support, you know that fact is true right here every time you turn on your TV or open the doors. Trayon White is on the front line fighting for you. And that's what it's going to take. We can get rid of the personalities or titles. Reality is we need a true servant of the people that's unbought and unbossed. And every day I've committed to doing this work. For 23 years straight, I sacrificed time with my family, with my kids, because I believe that we can be better when we do better. Trayon White is the candidate that's most qualified, most determined to turn this ship around to get things done for our ward. My name is Trayon White, and I approve this message.
So my name is. So my name is Rahman Branch. I'm number 2 on the ballot. I think it's important to identify a few facts for the room. Fact is, I've been serving Ward 8 since 2005. That's longer than both the candidates combined. That's a fact. The fact is that I inherited a school that was 2% proficient in reading and 3% proficient in math. That rose 50 points under my leadership. That's a fact. The fact of the matter is violence went down by 60% for our children, not just in the building, but in the surrounding community. That's a fact. I moved to the mayor's office. I created an office built to give the funds to our community for the needs we identify, and no one, including the council member, has put money into it. That's a fact. Right? So I think at the end of the day, now what I do for a living is I train people on how to be leaders. It's a skill set that I have. It's a blessing I've been given, but I've always been a servant. If elected, I'll make sure that you have an office that is responsive to your needs, that picks up the phone when you call, and gets results for you when you ask for them. My name is Rahman Branch, Councilmember 2.0 on the ballot.